continue tonight with going forward with the commentaries on Buddhahood, the heritage of the ultimate law of life. But before we get into the text itself, I wanted to mention a couple of things. Well, number one, a couple weeks ago I said something about President Cato said maybe you want to kick somebody's ass. I've never kicked anybody's ass, so I wanted to clarify that when I use those kinds of expressions, I'm not referring to anything of violence or disrespect for others. I'm just talking about, it's just human nature, expression of words. I just want to make sure I mentioned that I was supposed to last week, so nobody thought I was talking about taking things, hurting people. Also, tonight we're going to be talking more about, last week we stopped on the conversation of the unity of many in body, one in mind. So we'll be starting to read tonight, we'll be reading starting again on page 33. Okay, so as a supplement to that process, I also wanted to get into a couple of things so that they're defined in advance. Number one, when we talk about this unity of many in body, one in mind, especially as Soka Gakkai members. As I had said when we first started reading this is by the SGI Study Department, is going to promote the unity of the Soka Gakkai. Okay? And I qualified then that it's really more about your faith than it is your membership. Okay? And I just wanted to say as a supplement to the point that I'm trying to make tonight, I've already made it before, on the video we did a year ago on the 2nd of February 2018. It's 180207, chapter 12, many in body, one in mind. If you go to that video and you go to the 9-minute 15-second mark and you watch it until the 11-minute mark, you'll see me give a full little conversational explanation of what I'm talking about, and I won't repeat that. But as part of what I wanted to try and do tonight to make clear that what everybody understands as the heritage, again, to focus on that, so that it's not thought to be some sort of a belief set or something that's exclusive to an individual based on anything other than action. Okay? So even though we're going to read the true aspect of phenomena at a point in time after we get through this exercise, I'm going to read from the key points of that just to clarify something. It will only be about a page and a half, so please bear with me. I'm reading this again from Commentaries on Buddhahood, the True Aspect of All Phenomena. On page 9, it says key points. Please note this Mr. Saito saying again, these very important points. Okay. The true aspect of all phenomena is the law to which the Buddha awakened. In other words, one can attain Buddhahood by understanding this law. For this reason, the Expedient Means chapter states, the true entity of all phenomena can only be understood and shared between Buddhists. Everybody understands that point, right? Because this is the common understanding that all Buddhas have understood, and that's what qualified them as being Buddhists. He says here, there are many kinds of realization or awakening. For example, there is the realization of the impermanence of all things, which is the awakening sought by those of the two vehicles. From this truth, they reason that people suffer from attachments to things that are bound to change, because everything's impermanent, right? So the path to liberation from this suffering, they thought, could be found only in eradicating earthly desires and achieving a state of serenity. This is the earliest Buddhist view of enlightenment. Now, this is not the perspective of enlightenment that we're talking about when we talk about the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death, though. That's the whole point. That's the reason I'm reading this. Page 10, at the top of page 10, if you're following me, Zoe. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism regards the true enlightenment, and of course that's always the thing that's this is from the true aspect of all phenomena.
Oh.
You're looking at the heritage of the ultimate light. Yeah. That's why you're not finding it. There you go. It's the green one. All right. In contrast, on top of page 10, in contrast, Mahayana Buddhism regards the true enlightenment or awakening of a Buddha as the wisdom to understand the truth of all phenomena. Now, what's the truth of all phenomena? That they're all manifestations of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, right? He says the concept of the 10 factors in the expedient means chapter explains that's Nyose So Nyose, not the Jigage, I believe that last week. The concept of the 10 factors in the expedient means chapters explains how a Buddha sees the true aspect of all phenomena. The lifespan chapter also explains the thus come one perceives the true aspect of the threefold world exactly as it is. This view of wisdom gives rise to the idea that a state of genuine peace and happiness can be achieved through transforming earthly desires into wisdom rather than eradicating them. This principle is called earthly desires are enlightenment. We might consider the earlier view of enlightenment as a negative approach to earthly desires since it seeks to eliminate them. The Mahayana view of enlightenment, in contrast, may be described as a transformative approach as it seeks to change earthly desires into wisdom. The true aspect of all phenomena represents this Mahayana view of enlightenment. When people realize the true aspect of all phenomena, they will no longer be attached to the partial truth of impermanence. While understanding impermanence, they need not take a negative view to approach their earthly desires, for they are aware of the fundamental law that embraces all life and sustains all phenomena, which are in a constant state of flux. All right? Because your earthly desires can be one thing, but that can ultimately lead you to something else that's a more, valid kind of understanding and wisdom. Right. He says, all beings and environments in the 10 worlds, from hell the lowest to Buddhahood the highest, are without exception manifestations of Myoho Renge Kyo. That's from the true aspect of all phenomena. All phenomena are the ultimate reality or the true aspect. Myoho Renge Kyo. All beings and environments in the 10 worlds, from hell to the lowest to Buddhahood and the highest, corresponds to all phenomena. The concept of the 10 worlds explains all possible states of life. A being refers to life or a subjective self, and its environment to an objective realm. Now, we just had this conversation last week, that's why I'm reading this. Okay? It's just the expression all beings and environments in the 10 worlds signifies all phenomena, like we talked about last week. Everything, including life, that appears in the universe. Everything in the universe, Nichiren says, is a manifestation of Myoho Renge Kyo. Thus, the entire realm of phenomena is no different than the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo, also from the Gosha, the true aspect of all phenomena. Here, the realm of phenomena refers to everything, to the whole universe. In its true aspect, every phenomena is a manifestation of Myoho Renge Kyo, because that's the original state of all things, right? This fundamental law is Myoho Renge Kyo. It gives rise to life and death, 2 phases of the same thing, to formation and disappearance, to cause and effect. All of those were 2 phases of the same thing. You understand? The simultaneity of cause and effect is the reality of cause and effect. It's not cause and then effect. We understand that, right? Okay. So then going from that to trying to, again, make sure that we understand the concept of Kuan as we discussed it last week. I'm now going to read the dictionary definition we read from the orally transmitted teachings last week. Point 16, number 23, I believe. But on page 352, Zoe, since you seem to have brought everything, I'm so impressed. Okay, on page 352 of the dictionary, it says, and I'm going to read several dictionary things here before we start reading other things. So Kuan Ganjo, literally, Kuan means the remote past, and Ganjo, beginning or foundation. Okay? This term appears in On the Mystic Principle of the True Cause, a work which written by Nichiren in 1282. Now, does everybody know about this Gosho? This Gosho is not translated in English yet. No, this is the one that he gave to Nico at the time of his death. All right, this is this contains some mystic principles. Okay, this is the one that he really talks about. I'm the original teacher. Okay, a work written by Nietzsche in 1282. This work refers to the mystic law, uncreated and eternal, of the Buddha of beginningless time, which we read about last week, right? Of beginningless time, Kuan-Ganjo. So the Buddha of Kuan-Ganjo. Again, this work refers to, quote unquote, from that work on the principle of true cause, the mystic principle, uncreated. Okay, so it would have to be the original state, right? It's not created, and eternal, the original state of the Buddha of beginningless time. Okay, and states that the mystic law lies in the depths of the lifespan 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, not on the surface, not on any of the words as they're written and spoken. Nichiren interprets Kuan-Ganjo on two different levels. One, in the context of the lifespan chapter, Kuan refers to the remote past when Shakyamuni originally attained enlightenment, and Ganjo to the foundation of his original enlightenment. Two, in the record of orally transmitted teachings, Nichiren's oral teachings on the Lotus Sutra, compiled by Nikko in 1278, as I mentioned last week, it is stated, Kuan means something that was not worked for, that was not improved upon, but that exists just as it always has. Orally transmitted teachings continues, because we are speaking here of the Buddha eternally endowed with the three bodies, it is not a question of something attained for the first time at a certain time, or of something that was worked for. This is not the kind of Buddhahood that is adorned with the 32 features and 80 characteristics, or that needs to be improved on in any way. Okay? It's a true Buddha, right? Because this is the eternal and immutable Buddha in his original state, he exists always as he has, as a function of life. This is what is meant by Kuan. The same section of the orally transmitted teachings concludes, Kuan is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and true attainment means awakening to the fact that one is eternally endowed with the three bodies. That Buddha is also part of your life. Your life is that Buddha. Everything in the universe is that Buddha, is a manifestation of that original state. That Buddha is the original state. That Buddha is the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one. That's the point. He says, in essence, for Nichiren, Kuan or Kuan-Ganjo means the eternal law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the original state of life that embodies Buddhahood, okay, which is not occupied by an individual entity, right? It's all things. Okay, so that's Kuan-Ganjo. And then, because this is talking about many, faith based on the unity of many embodied, one in mind. And I already have warned before we start reading, this is going to be written slanted towards Soka Gakkai as being that predication of that, undisruptible unity that will accomplish Kosen Rufu. Okay? And I want to bring the point out that there's way too much argument in general amongst those people that chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo about other people that chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. In other words, we have to be very careful about slandering or disputing other individuals that also chant. That's a very serious slander. So in order to qualify where I'm coming from in the fine line that I'm ultimately going to get to, I want to go ahead and define what slander actually is. Because when you talk to people, if you give them any shit, and again, giving shit is always on the receiving end. I might say something not really thinking that I'm giving you a hard time at all, but because I really believe what I'm saying, it may come off as though I'm intimidating or not listening to you or taking a position of arrogance, okay? So when we talk about slander, there are essentially 14 slanders that the Daishonin has actually qualified, right, in the Gosho. But let's qualify specifically what is slander, okay? So when we talk about slander, are we talking about me being disrespectful to George?
No.
Okay, what is slander specifically always? It's always, almost always used outside of the realm of this definition. It's just if I'm nasty, I'm a slanderer, or I slandered you. If I wasn't polite, I slandered you. You know, if I said something that was in opposition to you, I slandered. I've heard so many people, you slandered me. And I'm going like, you don't understand what slander is.
Mm-hmm.
What is slander?
Take it to the letter. I mean,
it pertains to something to do with the law. Mm-hmm. You know, slandering me as it relates to my Buddha nature, okay, would be slandering the law more than you would be personally slandering the temporary gathering of the 5 components that I am. Okay, so it's not about what you're doing to Tom; it's what you're doing to what you're doing to the essence of Tom as realized by Tom, as actualized by Tom. Okay, and I use Tom only because I'm speaking. Each one of you could have used your own name in that example. So it says more specifically, slander of the law. Okay, now to deny, what is slander then? To deny, oppose, disparage, or vilify the correct Buddhist teaching. It doesn't say Buddhism. It doesn't say Buddhists. It doesn't say anything. It says the correct Buddhist teaching. So quite often, slander is really derived from what is the source origin of the point of reference that you're using in having a conversation with somebody, right? So the simile and parable, 3rd chapter of the Lotus Sutra reads, if a person fails to have faith but instead slanders this sutra, immediately he will destroy all the seeds for becoming a Buddha in this world. When his life comes to an end, he will enter the Avicii hell. Now the sutra says over and over again that you're already a Buddha, right? Mm-hmm. So if you dispute that point, you're disputing the teaching. Mm-hmm. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That now then puts the comments that are being made in a perspective of them relating to the law. That's something personally about you. Do you understand? You're really trying to only apply it on the deepest level rather than the superficial level where slander is anything like legal slander or something like that. He was in the bar till 4 o'clock in the morning and he left at 10.
They said people don't have the capacity. You should not read. This is why they are afraid that when you don't have the capacity to understand.
Well, here's the whole thing.
You didn't study enough.
This is really the
point. It happens that you slander the law.
Yeah, well, a lot of slander.
Slandering?
Yes, that is slander. That is slander. Okay, if you've done it on that basis as you just described it. At the same time, the whole concept here is that the importance of it's not about not studying. It's about not studying with a mentor. It's about freelancing on all this, never looking at a Buddhist dictionary, never reading what slander according to Buddhism. You just read it as a person that speaks English and hear slander and you apply your application of slander. That's the same thing I'm going to talk about for arrogance as soon as I finish this. All right? Arrogance is something very specific. It's not just, I think I'm smarter than you. Yeah. If I am smarter than you, I'm not being arrogant in saying, I'm smarter than you. Well, that's a very arrogant thing to say. Not actually, unless you can prove that I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? So now let's get down to the brass tacks of where you're coming from, where I'm coming from, and why I say what I say. Okay? That can lead to dialogue. But let me just get through slander again. He says, when his life, Milo says that in his annotations on the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, this Lotus Sutra opens the seeds of Buddhahood inherent in the beings of each of the 6 paths. But if one slanders the sutra, then the seeds will be destroyed. According to the Nirvana Sutra, not to reproach those who slander the law amounts to committing slander oneself. Did everybody hear what that just said? It's a very important point because this is slander according to Buddhism. All right? But if one's...
If somebody slanders the law,
you don't correct them. If you don't correct them, you're complicit. Complicity in slander is what it's really officially called. Complicity in slander is slander.
Right.
All right? And that's where a lot of these conversations begin. Because once I hear somebody say something that is not in keeping with the teaching that I understand and feels demonstrated in my life, I am obligated to qualify that fact with them
Right.
and either try to gain their more clear understanding or receive the more clear understanding that I'm lacking, which is why I have this mistaken view. Okay? So this is always the point. Slander is really something that comes from closing your mind. If your mind is open, it's never that way, because you're constantly trying to open a mutual understanding with another individual or expand the understanding that you have yourself. If you think I understood all this on my own at first, no, I had to, this all came from seeking. This was never a teaching that was taught to me, what I'm talking about right now. Okay, do you understand my point? So he says, even if, okay, so and this is the other very important part. This is the most important part for you to understand, because this is the position that Nichiren took as it relates to slander, and the source origin for Nichiren taking that position, the position of Shakabuku versus Shoju. Okay, so let me continue to read. Okay, according to the Nirvana Sutra, not to reproach those who slander the law amounts to committing slander oneself. The sutra reads, if even a good monk sees someone destroying the teaching and disregards him, failing to reproach him, to oust him, or to punish him for his offense, then you should realize that that monk is betraying the Buddha's teaching. But if he ousts the destroyer of the law, reproaches him, or punishes him, then he is my disciple and a true voice hearer. Nichiren states that those who put their faith in it, the Lotus Sutra, will surely attain Buddhahood, while those who slander it will establish a poison drum relationship with it and will likewise attain Buddhahood. Okay? So no matter what happens in regard to that conversation, both of you are going to attain Buddhahood by virtue of having discussed and engaged a conversation about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? So then, if we talk about slander as one of the 14, the first of the 14 slanders, then we get into arrogance. What is the definition of arrogance? Pardon me, there's several different types of arrogance. Let's go with the 9 types of arrogance first. Okay, 9 types of arrogance. All right, on page 457. Because there's the 7, the 8, and the 9 types. The 9 types is the most all-inclusive, right? Okay, because it's the longest one. 9 types of arrogance on page 457. 457. Got it?
Oh, oui. Go ahead.
All right. Also, 9 arrogances. 9 kinds of arrogance explained in the treatise on the source of wisdom in the Dharma Analysis Treasury. They are: the first type, thinking that one surpasses one's equals. Okay, this would be the mistaken position of the superiority of your position, right? 2, thinking that one is equal to those who are superior. Okay, you with me? Thinking that one is only slightly inferior to those who are far superior. 4, assuming false humility in affirming the superiority of those in fact superior to oneself. Acting as though you're being filial when really you have an attitude about it, right? 5, asserting equality with one's equals. Okay? 6, asserting the inferiority of one's equals. Do you understand?
Asserting equality with one's
Asserting
equals.
equality with one's equals, asserting the inferiority of one's equals, thinking that one is not surpassed by one's equals, thinking that one's equals are not equal to oneself, that they are inferior, and 9, humbly acknowledging the superiority of superiors and vaunting one's inferiority, a form of false humility. Okay? You know, when you're saying all the words, but you don't really believe them. Okay? It's false humility. All right? And then that was slander again. There it was. I guess I'm done with that part now then. Hold on, Joe. That was it. All right, so now going back to where we were last week. Many embody, faith based on the unity of many embody one in mind on page 33. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Yep.
Here we go. From the Gosho itself, all disciples and lay supporters of Nichiren should chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the spirit of many in body but one in mind, transcending all differences among themselves to become as inseparable as fish and the water in which they swim. This spiritual bond is the basis of the universal transmission of the ultimate law of life and death, the universal transmission of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. When you are so united, even the great desire for widespread propagation can be fulfilled. But if any of Nichiren's disciples disrupt the unity of many in body but one in mind, they would be like warriors who destroyed their own castle from within. All right, continuing to read what I was reading last week. Now, this is the third of the three conditions for you to inherit the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death. You understand? There were three that are mentioned in the Gosho. This is the third of the three. In this passage, as the third condition for people to receive the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death, Nichiren stresses the importance of creating the unity of many in body, one in mind, among the community of believers and of striving and faith within that community. Why does he want you to create that unity? Even the great goal of Kosen Rufu can be achieved. All right? So this is all about unity for the sake of the achievement of Kosen Rufu. So what is the achievement of Kosen Rufu?
Propagating the law.
Yes, of course, that's the way you get there. That is ultimately the Buddha's will. That's the process of making everybody Buddhas, or enough people that we pacify the land and we have an impact on everything. Correct? Okay. So basically, you're fulfilling the Buddha's will in having a desire for Kosen Rufu. That's why you have this unity, right? That unity of purpose for the establishment of Kosen Rufu. It's not a unity of purpose for the sake of having the biggest organization, the most correct views, the most outstanding this or the most outstanding that. It's really about accomplishing widespread propagation. Okay? So if I go into the conversations that exist in the public discourse, most of the conversations that I will find will be now Nichiren Buddhists opposed to Nichiren Buddhists. I won't find many Theravadins attacking Nichiren Buddhism. I will find some academics because they're all hung up on that. But most of the social media, the human beings having discourse with one another, are very, very disruptively slandering one another. Okay, because both sides have the Buddha nature, right? If you're not qualifying under those circumstances, if you're not treating that person with respect, what did Bodhisattva Never Disparaging always say? I would never disparage or, speak ill of you. Why? Because you have the Buddha nature. You got to understand, we could be saying the same thing just to Nichiren Shoshu members right now. What's the difference between us and Nichiren Shoshu members? In terms of outlook, in terms of practice, in terms of the stated goal of practice.
Same.
It's pretty much the same. The thing is that we have rejected the priesthood as an all-knowing, hierarchical, controlling circumstance, and they're pissed off at us because we've done that. We've now created slander that we can never repair. Okay? And what President Ikeda is actually even saying, though, is that it's not even really just about the priesthood and Soka Gakkai. It's really Soka Gakkai members that practice with the same mind as Nichiren. There's a huge difference between being a Soka Gakkai member and being someone that is of the same mind as Nichiren. Okay? And I've got a special thing I want to read for you at the end of the evening. Okay? I would have gotten it out for everybody else, but it's not appropriate. I'll wait. So, in this passage, as the third condition for people to receive the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death, Nichiren stresses the importance of creating unity of many in body, one in mind, among the community of believers and of striving in faith within that community. Without this unity, Myoho Renge Kyo, the law that enables all people to attain Buddhahood, cannot spread widely. The first and second conditions, which we already read in the last 2 weeks, are for individuals to receive the heritage. But the third condition is not only for individuals, because they must also participate in this, but for the community, but also for the community to receive it. Continuing on page 34. In this passage, transcending all differences among themselves could be rendered literally as, without any thought of self or other, this or that. A thought of self or other, this or that, refers to the discriminatory mind that distinguishes and creates a gap between oneself and others. Do you understand what he's saying there?
Yeah, but when the Soka...
Go ahead and say it.
When they separated from with the other ones, they didn't...
Who's that? Which they? The priesthood or
the priesthood?
Yeah.
At that time, how is it considered as a slander?
Exactly. Wait, here
so,
again.
And then saying that you practice the right way imply that they don't practice the right way.
Absolutely, we
so
would confirm that to them.
It could be considered as arrogance.
Yes, but only if we're incorrect in saying so. And so this is why I was emphasizing the three proofs.
But by the fact that they create the gap between the two communities.
They instigated that gap.
But we're not trying to find who is right or wrong.
No. I'm trying to qualify why we can make the statements that we make and they're not in conflict with the points that I'm reading directly as definitive interpretations of what that aspect really has to do with. We are obligated, okay, and they are obligated. If they think that we're slandering the law, this didn't just say only SGI members did it. That came straight from the Gosho. Okay? What I read was from the Lotus Sutra, but if one ousts the betrayer of the law, yada, 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 right? Okay, that still applies now. That's where this whole sense of conflict comes from. Okay? Do you follow what I'm...
But because it happens this way, both sides are wrong.
No, not necessarily at all. How are both sides wrong?
Because when you are...
Okay, hang on. If one side is saying that there is a hierarchical process necessary for us to be able to practice as human beings and bring forth our Buddha nature. If there was some tenant that said, if you don't make the overseas trip from wherever you live on earth to Fujinomiya and go to see the Daigo Honzon, you can never attain Buddhahood in your present form. I would have to take issue with that. That's not what the proof of actual fact has shown me. Okay? That's what Daisaku Ikeda is now qualifying for all the world. A lot of this stuff was actually instigated and put into the teaching of Nichiren Shoshu by Nichiren Shoshu hierarchical priesthood. Not by any of the teaching that... I could never find any of it in the Gosho. That was, when I say that I had these opinions on my own independent of anything that Daisaku Ikeda said, I'm dead serious about that. This took my own discernment was this process. As I would walk around the head temple and I would see things that just something inside me went, that's funky. that's funky. Is that right? Are those trees over there, they're supposed to be the walking sticks that Nico Shonen or Nichikan Shonen, somebody stuck into the ground. They turned into these great big massive pine trees with the roots pointing up into the air. All that was the dead top to trees. Okay? It was pretty visibly obvious that it had been given a mystified thing. I tried forever to try to imagine how there could be a tooth with human flesh growing on it, kept in secret somewhere. That was, keeping... You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about. You don't, because you've never been exposed to it, because you never practiced with Nichiren Shoshu. They were already separate by the time you started practicing.
It's not necessary to go to.
Again, but if we're going to achieve Kosen Rufu, you've got to have this understanding. Okay? That's why I'm even talking about it. Because I'm talking about stuff that in many ways is such old news, nobody even knows what I'm talking about. God, that split happened in 1991. That was almost 30 years ago what I'm talking about. But at the same time, I get sick, as I've already qualified, when I constantly see people attack Daisaku Keita just out of reflex, just out of this misunderstanding of the principle of, don't follow the person, follow the law. People have taken that expression and tried to manipulate it. There are people that have tried to manipulate what the actual intent of the mentor-disciple relationship is, as I've already qualified before. Now, those are all old misunderstandings, but I keep seeing them relevant in the public forums that I keep an eye on, so that I have an eye on an idea of what both sides actually think, where they're coming from. And they're both coming out of the best intent. But what I'm trying to say is really, we have a reason as Soka Gakkai members to have issue with the interpretations of Nichiren Shoshu, okay? And they may feel that they have issues of interpretation with us. But the proof of actual fact has already validated that the things that they all said that were going to happen at the very outset never happened. We didn't fall apart, okay? We didn't stop. I didn't quit receiving benefit, and your excommunication. It had no effect on my relationship with the Gohonzon or my identity as a bodhisattva of the earth. Okay? And as long as you're qualifying that that's a necessity, or that you know more than me because I've been corrupted by this influence of the Soka Gakkai's interpretation of the 21st century reality of the truth, okay, using modern scholars to do the interpretations rather than static interpretations that haven't changed for hundreds of years. There's a lot to what I'm trying to say. But what I'm also saying is that we all need to just chill out. We really need to quit being so angry about these things and discuss them more calmly. Okay? And so that's why I'm going to get into the rest of this in a calm way. I've already said everything I've got to say. All right? Let me just continue with the lecture. In this passages, pardon me, where am I? People easy. Okay. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to start at the page top of 34 again. Okay. In this passage, transcending all differences among themselves could be rendered literally as without any thought of self or other, this or that. A thought of self or other, this or that, refers to the discriminatory mind that distinguishes and creates a gap between oneself and others. Okay, so here's the Soka philosophy being expressed. Is it outwardly for no reason? Have we put down anything to do with the priesthood yet at this point in time? No. All right. People's egoistic concerns and disregard of others' welfare are what Nichiren means by thought of self or other, this or that. The discriminatory attitude of priests. This is where he's going to start kind of reflecting his opinion, what happened here. The discriminatory attitudes of priests, such as the former high priest Nikken Abe of Nichiren Shoshu, who distinguished themselves from lay believers, is an example of this mindset. So he's qualifying why he has issue with them, and I share that qualification. I share having that issue. All right? And how do we know that those priests had that perspective? Because they said so publicly when they excommunicated this. Okay? This isn't like an interpretive concept of their position. Although they won't put it in English anywhere that I can find. Okay? Maybe it's because they don't speak it. I don't know. Okay, so and I'll skip the reference to Nikan and Nichiren Shoshu from Soka Spirit. If any of you have ever visited Soka Spirit, there's a lot of information there that would maybe open your eyes a little bit. A hostile, discriminatory, and selfish attitude devoid of any desire for mutual understanding. Now that's the key. You can have a conversation that might even get a little hot, but if its intent is a desire of mutual understanding, there's nothing wrong with that.
Agree.
Okay? You understand what I'm saying? Nobody's saying let's all be Jesus. Let's all be smiling. Okay? That has nothing. Let's all be calm. That's real. I didn't see any of those words here. All right? I'm talking about a hostile, discriminatory, and selfish attitude is the opposite, the antithesis of one that's working toward understanding. Okay? Which, with such a vicious, self-absorbed state of mind, one cannot receive Buddha's heritage of the law. Okay? So if we get into these conversations and they accelerate to the point that somebody's turned off their head, we need to try and get it back to the point that we're communicating and not being angry about the circumstance. A little anecdote. I just had this happen when I talked a couple weeks ago about getting into a big argument with a friend of mine from Nichiren Shoshu. And see, one of the things that you're going to find, or at least I shouldn't say one of the things you will find, one of the things I have found is that having conversation with Nichiren Shoshu members, they really don't know that much about the Gosho. They think they know everything about the Gosho, but they know the stuff about the Gosho that I knew by the time I was a 3 to 5 year member. I mean, it's very basic. It's the very initial, it's really not enough to be a teacher. Yeah, you could teach people that way, and they'll all have this very simplistic understanding as well. And when they run into problems, they're not going to have a depth of understanding to be able to carry them through it. Right. Okay, and that's why has President Ikeda gone to the trouble to even have this rather than acquiesce to the priesthood, just to not have a consternation or a fight over all this. Why? There's a reason. You should understand it's not arrogance. It's not who's going to win. It's not about superiority. It's about Kosen Rufu. It's about Kosen Rufu. It's about what you must know and understand to live the life of a common mortal in the 9 worlds and be the Buddha at the same time. That was only actualized beyond a theoretical construct by the first 3 presidents and the practice that we now call Soka philosophy. Okay, and Soka philosophy and Nichiren Shoshu's outline are the same, but the specificity of what that actually reflects as are different. In other words, there's never women in charge of a whole bunch of stuff in Nichiren Shoshu. Okay, there are all these they don't make sense. They don't make sense in the context of the Daishonin's teachings and its ability to actually create widespread propagation. All right, so going on. A hostile, discriminatory, and selfish attitude devoid of any desire for mutual understandings. With such a vicious, self-absorbed state of mind, one cannot receive the Buddha's heritage of the law. So it should never be about you're angry at them. You want to try and help them understand something they don't understand. I started to say I was going to give you an anecdote. Let me real quick. I had an argument with somebody. I was very upset because of Renee's the seriousness of Renee's illness, and very emotional. And this person and I have had conversations before. We're not close friends. We're more acquaintances. And he's tried to debate me. And each time it was like I would ask 3 questions and the conversation was finished. So I've had previous conversations with the guy. And I understand he's very devout in his faith toward the priesthood and the correctness of Nichiren Shoshu. And I don't disqualify his sincerity at all. But then when I get down into, okay, well, it says this, right? Well, and it says this, right? Well, then if it says this and this, how do you qualify? You know, just basic trying to get to the bottom. So he's sitting there saying to me, as we're talking about Renee, you know, maybe sometime we could have a conversation. I could help you with some of your confusion. And I said, what do you mean, you know, my confusion? He says, we can help you understand. I think, you know, you're close, but you've confused a few things. But I understand that because, you know, frankly, Daisaku Ikeda also confused them. And so since I know that you learned everything from him, I can understand why you're confused. Well, I went kind of apeshit. You know, you might as well have lit a fuse on dynamite. I mean, I study more than anybody else I know personally, and I already know from previous conversations what the hell. So first of all, I swore a little bit. I showed anger. He says, well, you couldn't be a Buddha because you're a fourth world person. And at the same time, he just talked about how complex the simultaneity of cause and effect is, and that few people could understand it, but he could. And I'm going, well, if you understand the simultaneity of cause and effect, you understand my fourth world aspect right now has nothing to do whether or not the 10th world resides within my life. Oh, well, no, that isn't the way he views it. He views it as like peace and calm, and you're a nice person. You know, you would never get in anybody's face and give them shit. No. Okay? Well, I just read what Chang'an says, if you don't ask the sucker, you're a slanderer yourself.
Right.
Okay? Right?
Right.
So that's the teaching I know only from reading the Gosho. Because Nichiren's the one that quotes Chang'an. I never read anything by goddamn Chang'an. Okay? I only know the shit that Nichiren says Chang'an said. Okay? So, we then had this little, I said, don't even begin to go there, man, because, you know, I know him through Renee. And see, I had these kinds of conversations with Renee. Renee wouldn't even go there with me. Eventually, oh no. It was like, I told Renee many years ago, I will prove to you that what you're saying as far as Nichiren Shoshu is incorrect by proving with a proof of actual fact in my life that everything you're saying is not true. It's not actually true, bro. I'll take it upon myself to suffer what there is to suffer. If you're right and I'm wrong, then I'm going to know, because I'm going to devote myself to showing you with my actual proof, with my life, that I'm not wrong. And eventually Renee had to capitulate privately that I had proved my point, because he could never ever, he didn't study enough. You know, where did I get that Practices and Doctrines volume of Nichiren Shoshu? I got it from Renee. And the first time I read it, I realized this sumbitch has never been read. You can tell a brand new book, right? By the way the binding is.
Yes.
Okay, so now I thought I'd been given this very generous gift of, you know, this whole doctrinal thesis of, you know, qualifying everything. It's just something he had bought, he'd never read before. So I gave him my copy of Soka Spirit. Yeah, so he never read that either. Awesome. But I did read his, okay? And that's why I know it doesn't contain the things that they've left out. All right, so President Ikeda continues, and he's talking about all of us now. He's not talking about Nichiren Shoshu people. He's talking about all of us as human beings. People easily become egoistic and self-righteous, disassociating themselves from those whom they dislike or consider beneath them. I'm guilty of that. I admit I'm guilty of that. Okay? I have to challenge my 10th world all the time to not have that be the case. Okay? To build the unity that President Ikeda is talking about, though, he says, of many in body, one in mind, it is vital that we challenge. Okay? So it doesn't say we eliminate. It doesn't say that we have absent from our life this aspect of humanity and the convoluted reality of the lower worlds. He says that we challenge our selfishness and arrogance, okay? And try to achieve, like fish in water in which they swim. This expresses the type of inseparable, close human relationship Nichiren is urging us to develop out of respect, support, and appreciation for one another. Okay? So that can't be, as the outset, whose team are you on? Whose team, it's not on that basis. All right? It's about establishing dialogue and life-to-life contact. That's why he went so far as to contact Nichiren Shu. And oh my God, now you've created a heresy as it relates to Nichiren Shoshu. All right? Incidentally, at the bottom of page 34, it is possible that Nichiren derived this phrase from the classic Chinese novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, in which the close relationship of Liu Pei and Kuang Ming is described as the bond of fish and water. And then I'm going to read this to you next week, because it says the world of Nichiren. I happen to have all this stuff good. Nichiren also writes, if the spirit of many in body but one in mind prevails among the people, they will achieve all their goals. Okay, from the Gosho, many in body, one in mind, that I referenced a minute ago in terms of me talking about what I thought that was. When people gather to accomplish a goal, what is most important is unity. And there's no unity of purpose between the Nichiren sects, okay, toward Kosen Rufu anymore. We're all doing our own thing. And all I'm saying is I know some of the people that are watching this are not ascribed to anything. They may not even have Gohonzon. I'm trying to explain all of this up front, because this is really about you adopting a mind state that you're connected with your original mentor. It's not about Daisaku Ikeda or the head priest. It's not about Nichiren Shoshu versus Soka Gakkai even. The first and foremost thing has got to be about you, Bodhisattva of the earth, and the original teacher. Your relationship with the Gohonzon. Your relationship with the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Your desire to see that grow and that understanding expand. Okay, then deal with the balance of the political stuff. But the first and foremost thing has got to be not my team, my team, my team, but the law, the law, the law. Okay? So, he says then, when people gather to accomplish a goal, what is most important is unity. Many in body acknowledges that people have different appearances, dispositions, abilities, and tastes. We're not cookie cuttered out on this concept at all. This has nothing to do with all being the same. Many in body, one in mind. Does not at all mean everybody's the same. Each person has his or her unique qualities and background, and people achieve various levels of social status. One in mind means that people share the same purpose, values, hopes, or wishes, which would be Kosen Rufu, Kosen Rufu, Kosen Rufu, or Kosen Rufu. Okay, not I'm right or my team wins, but is widespread propagation achieved? All right, unity. People of diverse, unique, Unity, people of diverse, unique qualities taking action while sharing the same goal, allows individuals to bring forth great strengths they could not summon in isolation. In other words, many in body, one in mind, is a principle for harmonizing part and whole. Individuals' unique qualities and abilities to be expressed to the fullest extent as each practices toward Kosen Rufu, with faith in the Gohonzon and with a desire to help people. That would apply to Nichiren Shoshu just as much as us. That very general qualification of what the goal of Kosen Rufu should be about, this many in body, one in mind, is right there, without having to create any kind of a conflict. It is important to share the same goal and at the same time respect the differences among people. That's what this study department lecture is saying, what Mr. Saito is saying. If we do not acknowledge individual differences, forcing people to act in a uniform way, then we become totalitarian. So if you see that kind of attempt at making cookie cutters occurring in the Soka Gakkai study department disqualified, that's incorrect. Daisaku Ikeda is already qualified. I've stated it many, many times for you.
Yes.
We're pointed out where he's saying that's incorrect. We all know that does exist sometimes in the organization. But when it does, it's not correct. It's not in keeping with the concepts that the organization is supposed to be built around, and we must speak up. If we don't, everybody just thinks cookie cutter is the way to go because nobody reads anything. That's why we do the video, because nobody's going to read it. It is important to share the same goal and at the same time respect the differences among people. If we do not acknowledge individual differences, forcing people to act in a uniform way, then we become totalitarian. What harmonizes diversity is the people's spiritual bond. We all chant, we all want Kosen Rufu, We get benefit in our daily lives. As long as everybody's happy with that level, but as long as I'm getting benefit too, don't say that just because I'm not under the high priest's authority now that I'm a slanderer. Okay? And don't you ever call my Gohanzan that is a reflection of my life a counterfeit. Ever again. Okay? Those kinds of things need to be stated. We can still be friends as long as we make those points clear. Do you understand what I'm saying? All right. So what harmonizes diversity is the people's spiritual bond, the desire for Kosen Rufu. One in mind means sharing the same faith in the Gohanzan, which we all did, didn't we? Mm-hmm. Okay. Nichiren states the great vow refers to the propagation of the Lotus Sutra. It's Kosen Rufu. The great vow is about widespread propagation. He writes, if you are of the same mind as Nichiren, all right? From the true aspect of all phenomena. In other words, one in mind means to make the great goal of Kosen Rufu, Nichiren's intent. Being of the same mind as Nichiren, one's own mission. All right? By sharing the same goal, great vow of the Buddha, we create the spirit of one in mind. Only through each disciple connecting directly to the mentor can the unity of many in body, one in mind be created. Each disciple connecting directly to the mentor. He's talking about Nichiren Daishonin and the object of devotion. All right? He's not talking about Daisaku Ikeda. In this way, we can build an indestructible castle of capable people and an impenetrable castle of happiness far beyond ordinary camaraderie and connection. There's lots of people that have become chummy and good friends and eat dinner and whatever after whatever social, whatever. Churches are like that. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. That's not unity. That's not the unity we're talking about. We all get together for dinner after the meeting. That's not, no. Okay, that's friendship. That is a cause for unity, but the unity is really the unity of intent, how you live your daily life. Okay, and what it's devoted to. Herein lies the true goal of Nichiren's propagation. Here, Nichiren clarifies that the ultimate goal of his efforts to propagate the mystic law is to build the beautiful solidarity of human lives. No qualification other than human lives. When we steadily expand the unity of many and body, one in mind, he writes, even the great desire for widespread propagation can be fulfilled. Steadily expand. Okay, that means ceaselessly try to help others understand the correct teaching. On the contrary, those who cause the occurrence of many in mind, who destroy the unity of the Buddhist community, go against Myoho Rengekyo and thus commit the grave offense of slandering the law. As Nichiren admonishes, if any of Nichiren's disciples disrupt the unity of many in body but one in mind, they would be like warriors who destroy their own castle from within. Everybody's with me? So somebody attacking you when you're blameless in the approach that you're utilizing correctly, if you're correct in that, you've got the proof of actual fact, they're actually creating disunity. They're not trying to create unity. Do you understand? They're creating disunity. Many in body, many in mind describes a purposeless rabble, which is what I encounter most of the time on the internet, where people are different in their hearts as well as their appearances, with each acting selfishly. This is what Nichiren means when he writes, only worms born in the lion's body feed on the lion. Many in body, many in mind. This would essentially describe treachery against Nichiren's intent. Now, what was the great treachery? What's Nichiren's intent, Kosen Rufu? Treachery against Nichiren's intent was High Priest Nichikan excommunicating 15 million people at the threat of, if you don't follow me and get rid of Daisaku Ikeda, if you don't keep doing these things worldwide, if you don't start sending all the money to us, that's really what that boiled down to. Because again, Soka Gakkai is the richest lay organization in the world. There's a reason for that. It's not from extortion. Okay? It's from fortune. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between extortion and fortune. All right? Many in mind, this would essentially describe treachery against Nichiren's intent of Kosen Rufu, widespread propagation, and the equality of all living beings. Why do we sometimes witness the appearance of this state? Ultimately, it's because of arrogance, selfishness, and attachment. If people focus on their own gain or emotions or become consumed in arrogance, then complaint, dissatisfaction, hatred, and jealousy run rampant. In the end, they will betray others and become great enemies to genuine faith. In terms of our practice, creating the unity of many in body, one in mind means sharing the same intent as the three founding presidents who exemplified Nichiren's spirit and built unity within the Soka Gakkai, the genuine Buddhist community. Herein lies the source of all of our victories. And you understand where he's coming from in making that statement. I've already qualified how I feel about it. On the contrary, those who lose sight of the mentor's intent, he's talking about Nichiren, not Daisaku Ikeda. On the contrary, those who lose sight of Nichiren Daishonin's intent and give themselves over to shallow emotions or selfish desires, my team, rah, rah, my team, are called those of many in body, many in mind. Although they are entrusted with its protection, they destroy the castle from within. And that can happen on both sides. That's why I'm making this without worry. This could destroy the Soka Gakkai as easily as it can hurt Nichiren Shoshu. They destroy the castle from within, perhaps even colluding with enemies from the outside. Such people can only be described as traitors, as worms in the lion's body. They are the greatest enemy to our unity. President Toda once described the Soka Gakkai as being more important than his own life. To protect the Gakkai is to practice for Kosen Rufu. We must always be mindful of this and fight off those who try to take advantage of our organization. Many of them are members of the organization, by the way, those people that he's talking about. Those who attempt to destroy the Soka Gakkai will experience strict retribution in light of Buddhist causality. We must continuously remind one another of this point. President Ikeda writes, the harmonious body of Buddhist practitioners can be viewed from two perspectives. They can be likened to the warp and woof in weaving. When weaving a piece of fabric on a loom, the warp is first stretched out lengthwise and then crossed by the woof. The warp represents the bond of mentor and disciple, and the woof to the bond of fellow members. When these are interlaced, a splendid brocade of Kosen Rufu is created. In most woven textiles, the warp provides the fabric structure while the woof forms the pattern or design. Similarly, as long as the fundamental bond of mentor and disciple is supporting the Soka Gakkai, a wonderful pattern of solidarity of disciples may be fashioned. That's the end of page 38. We'll stop there. This all then references the wonderful world of Nichiren Daishonin's writings, and I'm going to read that to start before I go back into this. This whole thing about President Ikeda in another four-way conversation with Mr. Saito and Mr. Morinaka. And he's going to talk about their concept of many in body, one in mind. And you're going to see that it's objective. It's not Soka-centric. Okay?
What are you going to read with Catherine? You say you're going to read something?
I'll read it off camera.
All right.
Okay?
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.